You finally left the relationship, but you still replay conversations in your head and you're still confused. Part of you thinks, I should be over this by now, but you're not. And that is normal because leaving the relationship removes the person, but it doesn't automatically leave you feeling clear. Until clarity stabilizes inside of you, the confusion can keep resurfacing for days, months, even years. In this video, I'm going to show you the 5 phases your system has to move through so the confusion can finally start to clear. After going through this myself and working with so many clients over the years, I started noticing a pattern. Almost everybody tries to start by figuring out the other person. What did they mean? Why did they do that? Are they a narcissist or not? And that's not your fault because that's what most advice out there teaches. It can bring temporary relief, but it usually leads to more questions and keeps the confusion going. So I developed the Clarity First framework, 5 phases that restore your clarity from the inside out. And the order matters because if you skip a phase or you start in the wrong place, the confusion keeps coming back. But when you move through all 5 phases in the right sequence, clarity becomes steady, grounded, unshakable, even if no one else believes you. So let's start with the first phase. Phase 1, emotional clarity. My emotions make sense. Even though emotional clarity is the most foundational phase, most people skip it because they've been taught that emotions are something we need to control. Calm down, regulate, breathe, move on. But your emotions were never the problem. They were the first signal that something in the relationship was off. Maybe you felt uneasy, dismissed, anxious, hurt, angry, and instead of understanding those signals, you were taught to question them or calm them down. Maybe you thought, I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm projecting. Maybe it's my trauma. Maybe I need to learn how to regulate my nervous system better. But emotional clarity means asking a different question. What is my body actually trying to tell me? Because emotions are information, and when they finally start to make sense, something powerful happens. The self-blame loosens, the shame drops, and the confusion begins to lift. Phase 2, self-clarity. I know who I am. Once your emotions start to make sense, the next phase is self-clarity. And this is where a lot of people get stuck because after a confusing relationship, many people start turning the lens onto themselves. You replay moments where you reacted, maybe where you raised your voice or where you said things that you regret, where you weren't the calm, patient version of yourself. And suddenly then the question becomes, but my behavior was unhealthy too. Maybe I was part of the problem. Was I the toxic one? Am I a narcissist? But reacting inside of an unhealthy dynamic does not define your character. It's what happens when someone is repeatedly pushed past their limits. Self-clarity means stepping back and reconnecting with your baseline, who you actually are, your values, your integrity, your standards for how you treat people, not just as ideas on a list, but as something you know to be true in your body. Because when you're grounded in that baseline, something shifts. And for the first time in a long time, you can see yourself clearly again and start standing steady genuinely in your character. Phase 3, relational clarity. I see the relationship clearly. Once your emotions make sense and you can see yourself clearly again, the next phase is relational clarity. And this part is important because you cannot see a relationship clearly until you understand yourself clearly, until you trust your emotions, until you know your baseline, until you're grounded in who you are. Because once you have that baseline, it becomes your measuring stick. Only then can you look outward and accurately to assess the other person. Because for a long time, many people stay stuck trying to understand the other person, why they acted that way, whether they meant it, whether they'll be able to change. You analyze their intentions, their childhood, their trauma, their potential. But true clarity doesn't come from diagnosing someone or finding the perfect label that fits them. It comes from comparing their behavior to your baseline. Do they take accountability the way you do? Do they care about your feelings the way you do? Do conversations move towards repair or toward confusion? When you start observing those patterns and measuring them against your own baseline, something shifts on a much deeper level. You stop trying to explain the relationship and you start seeing it clearly. And once the pattern becomes clear, the confusion begins to fall away. Phase 4, decision clarity. I know what to do. This is the phase where many people start to hesitate. This is where they can get stuck thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm overreacting? What if I misunderstood everything? Or they feel completely stuck, like they don't know what the right next step is. But here's the important thing to understand. When someone truly moves through the first 3 phases, the decision stops being confusing because at that point, you know what your emotions were telling you, what you need, what your baseline is, and what the other person's pattern actually looks like. You can see them clearly. And when those things are clear, action doesn't come from pressure. It comes from alignment. You don't have to force yourself to decide. You simply know what to do. You know what you're no longer willing to tolerate. You know what is healthy for you and what the next step should be. That clarity doesn't feel dramatic. It feels grounded, steady, like something inside you is finally settled. And when you decide and act from that place, you're no longer asking everyone around you what you should or shouldn't do. You're not polling your friends. You're not searching the internet for reassurance because the clarity is already inside of you. And that's when something very important begins to rebuild, your self-trust, which brings us to the final phase. Phase 5, self-trust clarity. I trust myself again. You're no longer convincing yourself. You're no longer replaying the same conversations. The knowing becomes automatic. You notice when something feels off. You understand your emotions and what they're telling you. You're grounded in who you are. Your baseline is clear, and you can see other people's patterns easily. So instead of spiraling, you simply see it clearly, calmly. You don't override your signals anymore. You don't talk yourself out of what you know to be true. And you don't abandon your clarity just because someone else disagrees with it. Because at this point, your clarity isn't coming from outside validation. It's coming from within you. You trust your emotions. You trust your own discernment. You trust your ability to see other people clearly. And that changes everything. Self-trust doesn't mean you'll never face difficult relationships again. It means you'll never stay confused inside of one. You'll see what's happening sooner, you'll respond faster, and you'll move forward with clarity instead of second-guessing yourself. Think of how much time you will save and how much more present you can be in your life and your other relationships. But here's something important to understand. Most people can intellectually understand these 5 phases. They watch a video maybe like this one, they take notes, they feel inspired and they're clear for a few days, but then a memory hits, a conversation replays, something triggers doubt. And suddenly all of the confusion comes rushing back, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because clarity doesn't stabilize through insight alone. It stabilizes through guided application, repetition, and support to embody these 5 phases. And that's exactly why I created the Relationship Clarity Program. This is a 5-month guided container where you'll move through these 5 phases together with me step by step, applying them directly to your real experiences, to your real relationships, and the situations that still trigger confusion. So the clarity can actually land in your body, not just in your mind. Inside of the program, you'll receive the complete Clarity First framework taught step by step so you can decode your emotions, assess your relationships, and make grounded decisions from clarity so you can finally move on with your life. You'll get regular live coaching and Q&A calls with me so you can apply the framework to real situations and get your questions answered in real time. And something I've noticed working with so many clients, when people watch someone else's dynamic get decoded in front of them, they often recognize their own pattern immediately. Because when you're inside of a situation, it's hard to see it clearly. But when you can see that same pattern happening to somebody else, the clarity can click much, much faster. You'll also get a private community space with direct access to me so you can ask questions when confusion resurfaces and get grounded support between calls instead of spending weeks spiraling alone trying to figure it out. And for the first 15 people who join this upcoming live cohort, I'm also including private one-on-one sessions with me so we can work directly with your specific situation and interrupt the confusion loops much faster. Because the goal of this program isn't just another moment of insight, it's lasting clarity and self-trust so you can move forward without second-guessing yourself. So if you're ready to stop living in confusion and finally feel steady in your own knowing, you can learn more about the Relationship Clarity Program at relationshipclarityprogram.com. I'll put the link below, and I'd love to support you inside.